Hey everyone. So, this video is more so in response to the recent drama that occurred between this prominent debater on TikTok versus My Buddy Noodles, where they debate about whether or not Inaccessible Speed existed on Versus Battle Wiki. Now, I'm only here to tell you the facts of the matter and not who I thought won the debate, and the facts are that Inaccessible Speed was never on Versus Battle to begin with. And we're going to be going through all the evidence that is necessary to prove said fact, and I'll be leaving all the links that I'll be showing you here to all these different sites in the description. So the first thing I'm going to point out to everyone is that there exists a page, particularly, that lists every single little revision that Versus Battle has ever made in regards to the speed page. Alright. And anyone has access to this very page, in which each link will show you what the page looked like after the revisions were made. Now, obviously, if I went through every single little revision that they ever made in this video, it'd be way too long of a video. So the link to this very page will be in the description if anyone wants to call my bluff here. And for the sake of brevity, we'll just be going year by year and see how their standards have changed over the years. Starting off with 2016. They had Omnipresence as a speed tier, which is obviously wrong. Infinite speed was defined as fast as desired, which is so incredibly vague it practically could be the same tier as irrelevant speed. That could be argued that way. And also apparently you had to be a higher dimensional being in order to be considered to have immeasurable speed. Now, obviously this is all pretty bad, but not really relevant enough to touch upon, so let's just skip ahead to 2017. Where now Omnipresence is just superior to immeasurable, but inferior to irrelevant speed. You still need to be a higher dimensional being in order to be considered immeasurable. And now, infinite speed now has a more elaborate definition, where it's able to move indefinitely where time literally stands still, or to travel anywhere instantly. Now, to be more clear, Versus Battle defines these as practically meaning the exact same thing, even if, although I did kind of prove that these shouldn't mean the same thing in my speed tiering video, but that's not really the point. So I won't really prattle on this too much, but something I'm going to be showing you is, although they add something to this definition for infinite speed, it's actually more so that they made the definition more elaborate rather than full-on changing it, as we'll soon get into. So, as we move on to 2018, Omnipresence is no longer a speed tier. Thank God, it's a state of being. You are no longer required to be a higher dimensional being in order to be considered immeasurable. And as for infinite speed, they've now added a note 4 to their definition, which states that characters who showcase the ability to move freely and naturally in a timeless void may qualify for infinite speed, as long as it's basically not a massive outlier. Which is okay, I guess. It kind of really depends, but not really relevant to touch upon. But it kind of leads into Versus Battle thinking that what we call inaccessible speed is basically the same tier as infinite speed, which I'll kind of go more into later in the video, but keep that in mind as we move on to the most relevant year in regards to the topic of this video, that being, as we move on to May 9th of 2019. Where basically now we have traveling an infinite distance and within a finite amount of time has now been added. Now, what some of you might not know is that this portion of the definition was added right after they closed the thread, where they not only proposed this is a better alternative for the definition of infinite speed, but it was also the same thread where the beautiful man known as Nairobi had proposed the idea of inaccessible speed, which would be a speed tier in between infinite speed and immeasurable speed. Alright, now basically I'm going to try and reiterate what Naya says here, so that you all can try to better understand why we wanted this to go through. But before I do that, I like to give credit to Naya and Webcam Parrot, as they were the ones who invented the idea of inaccessible speed, and this speed tier has been on character stats and profiles for a while now, even before this proposal has been made. So if you wanted to know who to give credit to in regards to this speed tier existing, those are the main guys to recognize. Now, but anyway, back on topic, infinite speed is basically traveling an infinite distance within a finite amount of time. And regardless of how much distance said character travels, they're still traveling an infinite distance, hence the name Infinite Speed. Now, the problem is that Versus Battle, as we'll soon get into, believes that traveling anywhere in 0 time should be categorized within the same tier, which is fundamentally flawed for many reasons. And it kind of goes into what I point out in my speed tiering video, which was, once you go beyond infinite speed, the distance you travel practically becomes irrelevant as a concept, although not literally, as inaccessible speed is traveling any distance within 0 amount of time, or if time is null, and time would be null if it was like a timeless void, meaning that time is like literally nothing, or if it doesn't exist there. So if you had 2 characters race against each other across an infinite distance, the character of infinite speed would quite literally be frozen to the character who has inaccessible speed. Because even like the smallest finite number is nowhere near as impressive as 0. And such a difference is similar to how an inaccessible cardinal is treated in comparison to sets of infinity, or otherwise known as aleph, in that no matter how many infinites you stack on top of each other, you'll never be able to reach an inaccessible cardinal, which is literally a cardinal that cannot be accessed. Alright, and hence the term inaccessible speed. Now, I'm going to be mainly skipping the responses of everyone who isn't a staff member, as they never become relevant to the overall conversation, nor were any of their opinions regurgitated or really acknowledged. Oh, there's me. There's me. Okay, so basically, we'll just skip all the way down until we get to Ant. Alright, who is one of the main Wiki administrators, that states that he simply just thinks that an entirely new separate speed tier dedicated to timeless void feats or moving in 0 time feats seems very unnecessary, with seemingly no justification. And as well as something you'll tend to see as a common trait for Ant, and as you'll ask like a lot of like the veterans in the community of like Versus Battle, that basically it's become a meme at this point that he pretty much relies on other staff members to do all the thinking for him, with the infamous like "let's ask Matt" being thrown around constantly, like whenever like a thread was made and he just doesn't know how to give input. He's just like, well, let's just ask like the staff for their input. As you'll see, like even like a staff member is like, oh, let's just modify the current definition a bit. So like that's the only thing that seems necessary. He's like, and as you'll see, it's like it is argued that moving in absence of time is above moving infinite distance in a finite amount of time. And of course, what does Ant say? Well, we need to consider input from knowledgeable members first. And we'll see who he considers as a knowledgeable member. This being one of the guys, apparently. So it isn't surprising that he says that even against another staff member. But now we have this staff member who basically attempts to try to make fun of this one user defending inaccessible speed, which isn't that relevant to this conversation. But I just wanted to point out here that this entire thing here that you're seeing right here is just all word garbage. All right, it doesn't really mean anything. And as you soon see, like this guy doesn't know at all what he's talking about, and he pretty much failed at trying to make fun of this test acer guy. Alright. He really tried to flex on him with his big brain knowledge, but as you'll soon see in his next message, it's not really the case. Where he basically says that because they're all traveling the same distance, that being infinite, that the time frame for said movement is all the same. And so then says that so all those things are the same speed, hence the infinite speed doesn't need separate levels as it's all the same speed. Let that sink in for a second. So all those things are the same speed, hence infinite speed doesn't need separate levels as it's all the same speed. So basically anyone who runs a 100-meter dash are all the same speed because no matter what, the distance remains the same. Alright, regardless of time frame. That's verbatim what he says. That's what he's saying right here. I can't even make that up. You, like literally what he's saying is, you as a fetus are as fast as Usain Bolt if you both did a mile run, alright? Time frame does not matter apparently. So yeah, this guy does not know what he's talking about at all. And of course, the rest of the staff members just eat up and accept it as a valid counter for inaccessible speed, for being its own speed tier. And what happens after they end up agreeing to modify the infinite speed definition, close thread on May 9th of 2019, and boom, there's your definition. Alright. And as we'll soon, and as well as the fact that Note 4 is now saying that it may or may not qualify for traveling an infinite distance, that like moving in a timeless void may or may not qualify for infinite speed. But as we move on to say 2020, that's actually the same thing. Move on to 2021, like current day. Now it is cannot be used to grant infinite speed. Alright. So, and for some reason they also took out the traveling anywhere indefinitely while time stands still, even though they pretty much think that this means the same thing as that. Okay, so there you go. That's pretty much it. Like, that's the basic history of the Versus Battle Wiki speed page. And if you want my personal opinion on it, well, just the page in general, once you get to like these are kind of the only things I really have a problem with, along with their notes. Like everything else up here is pretty much fine. But really, I believe like everything else is like okay. However, I would recommend everybody to rather use this page instead from character stats and profiles. But anyway, that's basically everything. Thank you all for watching. I hope this clears up everything in regards to the Versus Battle Wiki and Inaccessible Speed. And class is dismissed.